Hello, welcome to another edition of the Front Row Roundtable Show presented by Ralphie's. Glad to have you with us. Joining me this week, the old gang back together. John Malkoski. He is part of the St. John's Radio Network and official scorer for the International League.
Now mainly the official scorer for the International League.
Well, yeah.
St. John's takes a break for a while.
Right. You're not doing many baseball games on radio. So.
No, we're not.
Marty Bihn, our resident court jester. And,
Thank you. I was hoping you'd introduce me as I think of myself. Yes.
And mortgage guru.
I do claim to know.
So you never see on Twitter, but one of your assistants always posts the 5-star ratings that you get.
Yes, he does a fantastic
And
job.
I always retweet them, too.
I would have no knowledge of these
He does. I can
intricacies of these things. I appreciate that. I mean, here's the thing. It's weird because I'm the oldest young guy or the youngest old guy, and I'm not sure which it is. So I think it's the oldest young guy ever because it's not that I don't like those things. Oh. I don't even understand how to use them correctly.
No, I actually posted it on my Facebook page, the Norm Wamer Productions Facebook page, and Kenny, who's on there all the time, actually said that you just helped him close his house. So. And said you were the best. So.
Well, thank you. Again, we try to do the right thing all the time. It's not that difficult.
Also,
it's just when it comes to the other stuff, I am so bad. I know to stay away from it.
Right.
It's like, when you hang every curveball, don't throw a curveball because it ends up in the bleachers. Me trying on my own to get on there and be successful,
it's not that tough.
It's hanging curveballs. That's all I'm saying.
Trust me, on Twitter, not everybody's a brain surgeon.
And I've seen what happens when you're not a brain surgeon and hang the curveball.
I'm just
Ask, let's see, Josh Allen when he was a teenager and several other people.
Yeah. That's the big problem. They don't go away.
Correct. And here's the thing. It's Saturday night. It's a little late. Uncle Marty may like his libations occasionally. And then I would see something and comment, and then it wouldn't go away. And I think most of my random thoughts need to stay exactly that. My random thoughts.
Well,
occasionally I text you, and
that.
I know that you won't forward them on. And John, I don't have your number, but if you'd like me to text you on a regular basis with these weird random thoughts, it won't be that often. But when it happens, I don't want them to go anywhere else.
He's at Big Bearded John. I'm just at Norm Wamer, and he's at Mortgage Marty Bihn, I think.
Correct.
And I've been tantalizingly close to 1,000 followers for quite some time, so please push it over 1,000. It's driving me nuts. All right, let's get down to some things here. Before we do, I want to mention Monroe Dodge is a sponsor. We appreciate it very much. Ralph Mahalik, always very good to us, and everything that he does. The low payment king up at the Monroe Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Superstore. All right, we're getting a little serious here on this first segment. And this is there's been multiple articles on this. New York Times picked up on it as well, and this has to do with a college pitcher who pitches at Oregon State, and in his past it came out, somebody kind of stumbled across it, as a 15-year-old he molested his 6-year-old niece. At least he took a plea deal on it. All right, he's since claimed he didn't do anything, but he did take the plea deal. But it was when he was 15, and what they did was, as part of the plea deal, was when he was 16, one of the charges was dropped. He was placed on 2 years probation, took court-ordered classes, had to register for 5 years as a level 1 sex offender, and that's the designation the state of Washington uses for someone considered of low risk to the community and unlikely to become a repeat offender. And he no longer has to register as a sex offender. He's 22 years old. Did not get drafted in the last draft, right?
Right. He was eligible for the draft, but this came to light in the middle of the season, and he left the team. Said he wanted to straighten things out, so nobody drafted him. He went through 40 rounds, 1,200 players, and nobody drafted him.
So I've often brought this up. Where's the line?
I can say from my perspective, this is one of those classic nobody's right, nobody's wrong, and it's impossible for me to decide because, one, I really don't know what did or didn't happen. I mean, you read about the accusation. The second is, obviously, it's a heinous accusation. I mean, so for me to say that somebody who did that should be given all the opportunities that the world gives, that's hard too. But at 15 to also say that it's over, to me, seems draconian. And so I find myself, I mean, as we were talking about this, I find myself going back and forth on it. And at the end of the day, I was thinking 15 is awfully young to write a person off forever. So to me, are they held to a significantly higher standard going forward, and should they be held to a different standard? Probably. I mean, I think yes, in my opinion. But should they be forever banned from certain things? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both have teenage sons. They act like morons sometimes.
Stop acting. Both of you, stop it.
I mean, they do stuff. I did stuff. I'm sure you did
And
stuff.
no sweat beyond that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is more than just
correct.
being
And
stupid.
we're not going to go into details on it. If you want to, it's easy to look up.
Correct.
Right.
Go to
Well,
Google, go to the internet.
and that's the thing. If it was they got caught toilet paper in a house and somebody broke a window or whatever, okay. That's why I have a hard time with this one, because I think, not to make it lighter, but the awful things that Josh Allen tweeted that he's going to have to account for in a locker room or whatever, to me, are foolish things that young people do that they wish they had back. This is not that. This is not the, at least as I understand it, because again, I don't pretend to know what actually happened versus what he pled to. But to me, this is significantly more than a young person being a young person. This is a heinous act, if it's true.
Right.
And so it's hard for me, because this isn't that. This is what it is. But I also wasn't there.
Right. But I also don't know how a guy who's gone through the system, paid his penance to society, how you can say, well, you can't play baseball. Why baseball? Why, if a guy goes to medical school and did something like this, well, you can't be a doctor now because of this.
Well, who was the receiver, and I can't believe I can't think of it, who had the intoxicated conviction and killed someone, and then was eligible to play in a year?
Dante Stallworth.
Thank you. I can't believe I couldn't remember, but to me, is this accusation worse? And I understand, because it's a child, we all think of it differently, but in reality, is it worse? And I have a hard time with that.
Right.
But you do have to think of it differently when they're minor.
But in this case, it's two. What I'm saying is, it wasn't Dante Stallworth at 31 being accused of something with a 6-year-old. It's a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, which we draw a distinction that we think 15-year-olds make good decisions. In my experience, is 15-year-olds make awful decisions all the time.
Well, and his record is now expunged.
Right.
If you look it up, or when he applies for a job, there's always that box. Have you ever been convicted? He marks no, and it doesn't come up. Just because he's in a high-profile situation, does he have to pay a higher toll than everybody else? I mean, if you're going to go get a job at a mortgage company, and this had happened, you check no on the box, and
No one cares.
Nobody cares, and you go on with your life. I don't see why we should single out why he should not be able to play baseball just because he's a baseball player.
I want to hold this over for another segment, so we'll take just a little bit of an early timeout, and when we come back, I want to expand on this a little bit and kind of look at sports in general and those who have run afoul with the law, how things should be handled from a league perspective. We'll do that when we come back. It's the Front Row Roundtable show presented by Ralphie's here on NBC 24.
Bring yourself to Ralphie's. Yeah, it's that good. It's that good, no matter what your taste. It's that good. Come early, stay late. Burgers and beer, a shot of cheer. Great food and fun. It's that good here. Bring yourself to Ralphie's. Yeah, it's that good.
Ag Mortgage Marty here. With the new tax code changes, home equity lines of credit, HELOCs as we call them, have changed whether they're deductible. And with recent interest rate increases, you're seeing those variable rates on them increase. I had a lot of interest in customers putting them in with their first mortgage, converting to a 10, 15, even 20 year to compress the timeline so they're not stretching back out over 30 and get better rates. If you have interest in that, just text HELOC to the number you see on the screen there, HELOC, and we'll get you info on how to take advantage of that tax deductibility all over again.
Save more at the Monroe Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Superstore when you drive home one of 4 amazing new models for only $178 a month. Drive home in a 2018 Dodge Charger GT all-wheel drive, 2018 Jeep Compass Limited, the all-new 2019 Jeep Cherokee Limited, or the all-new 2018 Jeep Wrangler Limited Sport 4-wheel drive 4-door. Call the Low Payment Kings toll-free at 1-888-4-DODGE-1 or check out hundreds of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs at monroesuperstore.com.
Since 1982, Red Wing Shoes at North Reynolds and Bancroft, selling purpose-built footwear for men and women no matter what your job is. Carrying the largest selection of Red Wing shoes in Northwest Ohio, over 3,000 pairs of boots, shoes, and accessories in stock to ensure the proper orthotic fit and style for your line of work. Stop in and see Mike, Aaron, or Bob at their newly renovated office. We're easy to get to at the corner of North Reynolds and Bancroft with ample parking. Red Wing Shoes, Reynolds and Bancroft, where service, quality, and fit come first.
All right, back we are on the Front Row Roundtable show presented by Ralphie's, and there is not a better place to catch a game at Ralphie's, or catch lunch, or catch dinner, or after 9 o'clock, catch appetizers at half price, and all the craft beers, and on and on and on. I actually had a stuffed burrito there last Sunday while watching the Tigers.
Watch LeBron make a shot from behind the baseline that you scratch your head and go, I don't think if I stood there till tomorrow, I could make it without a hand in my face, and I'm 100% sure with a hand in my face, I'd never hit
Let's grab the wheel and we'll pull the show back on the road. Okay. All right, Norm Wamer, Big John Malkoski.
Court jester.
Browns fan, Marty Bihn.
As a Cowboy fan, since we're going to talk about this.
No,
because we're going to talk about what you're going to talk about. So I'm still torn on how to handle Zeke Elliott.
Well, see, here's the thing, and we were talking in the first segment, if you joined us late, about the pitcher from Oregon State. He's 15 years old, was convicted of molesting his 6-year-old niece.
By the way, if you're not from the area,
he's no longer has to register as a sex offender. It was all taken care of. Here's the thing. I used to think that playing pro sports, baseball, NFL, NBA, was a privilege. I don't think it's a privilege. I really don't.
Do you think it's a right?
I think it's business.
Yeah, but see, to me, that's privilege then. See, a right is something that has to be taken away from you.
I don't want to. I don't think it goes to privilege.
Is driving a right or a privilege? Is driving an automobile?
If you pass the tests, it's.
Yeah, but if you don't pass the test and you don't follow the rules,
the government can take away your ability to do it, and so.
I mean, you have a right to free speech, but if you sign on at a job and say things that are horrible, the job has a right to get rid of you. It's a privilege of working there.
Privilege kind of makes it sound like they can just get rid of you for anything.
I don't agree with that either. You have rights, but you sign on to a certain set of predisposed understandings. And I think in professional sports, that's what we're down to.
But how is professional sports any different than any other business? Other than the exemption that Major League Baseball has, the antitrust exemption, which is the stupidest thing, or at least one of them. It ranks up there in the top 10. But how is it different than a business?
I think Colin Kaepernick galvanized this in a way that's easy to understand going forward. When you cost them money, as opposed to drawing in money, then they make the decision.
But that goes back to your free speech. I mean, he had the right. The government did not. He had the right to go.
He can keep doing that. The NFL said you're not going to do it under the privilege of working under our banner.
They didn't say that.
They don't
never said
listen.
That.
They don't have to say it. The fact that he didn't get any job doesn't he get an
They've never said that.
I don't care. I think their actions speak louder than the lack of their words.
Well, but they did. They never said that.
And the fact that this young man, if he's talented enough, didn't get drafted, says something about the decision not to take that on. And I think, honestly, that's a business decision. And we can sit and question it, but it's not a right, in my opinion, to play professional sports.
And baseball is probably a little bit different in this area just because when you're drafted in baseball, you go to the low minors. Right. A lot of those guys stay with host families. They've just got a family that puts them up, somebody in a house that has an extra bedroom. It might get a little iffy hey, here's, this guy, we want you to host him, but, he has this in his past. You don't do that in any other sport. I mean,
what happened with Kaepernick would never have happened in baseball because the union's strong.
Right.
NFL, it's not.
See, I think the baseball union is not near as strong as it used to be, and I think you're going to find out how not strong it is going forward.
And what makes you say that?
Because I think the current agreement, look at the loopholes with the rookies and some other things. I think baseball has grabbed the reins back because the union, because of the steroid problem, still isn't quite back to feeling out its oats the way it used to.
You're going to have a hard time convincing guys like Max Scherzer and Miguel Cabrera that the union's not strong with the paychecks that they're drawing.
But that's not union.
And-
I don't
and
think
I-
that's
I don't
union.
wanna
I don't
get
think
this
that's
off
union.
course.
I
I don't
understand.
wanna
We
get
don't
this
agree
off
that that's
course.
union driven. That's just economics that's silly driven.
Sure, it's union driven because they help craft the rules.
And in the NFL, the NFL's union is not strong. They can't even get guaranteed contracts.
Exactly.
For-
You can't
for-
get
Well,
an
they
Or
can't
the-
get them mandated.
You can't get
'Cause
an
now
8-year
you're starting to see a few.
You can't get an 8-year guaranteed contract in the NFL.
If I was an NFL owner, I wouldn't do that. The
Well,
shelf lives are different. Listen, that's not. I don't think that's driven by the union. That's driven by economics. The reality is, how many players play 8 years?
The NBA union is stronger than the NFL and the NHL.
And smaller and different. I mean, again, I think trying to lump
But the
them all in together.
NHL union is not very strong.
But the NFL, to show how not strong it is the only league to have gone on strike and have their players go across the picket lines and say, well, forget this, I'm playing.
But to me, I don't see it as being a privilege unless you say all jobs are privileges.
Well, to a certain extent, all jobs are privileges.
Well, you don't have a right to a job. That's a given.
And I mean, so here's the
But
thing.
you have a right to not be treated certain ways
but,
while
but
you have a job.
Except I
At
would.
least in some states.
And my problem with that is, as someone who's an employee and an employer, meaning someone who has supervisory capacity, I also appreciate that Ohio is not a place where you can only get rid of someone if you have a reason, as opposed to
Well,
they're
I don't
just not
want to
working
devolve
out.
into politics here.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, to me, it's a yin and yang. Okay, there are people that aren't a great fit, and sometimes the right thing to do is to let them go, and they might not have done anything wrong. And yet, if you have to go through 1,000 things to prove you shouldn't do somebody, you know what that does is you don't hire people because you don't give them a chance. Because I, honest to gosh, I've hired plenty of people who were great people.
Let's grab the wheel and steer this back onto the road.
You're the
where
one
the
who brought up right and
conversation's at.
privilege.
But don't,
Sure, but that doesn't mean it has to devolve into a political discussion.
But
What
it is.
What I'm saying is the thing that I was striving here. If you've committed some kind of offense and you have fulfilled your punishment, why should the punishment then continue?
well, and sports has always been, no matter what level, what sport, has always been driven by supply and demand. It doesn't matter what you've done, if you're athletic enough and worth enough on the field. Ray Lewis was up for murder charges, and go on and on.
Here, Brown's fan. Josh Gordon keeps getting chances because he does things that.
Well, and Mark Ingram,
Well, the two things are a little different.
But I'm saying, but how many?
but Dante Stallworth he brought up.
I'm talking about something that's happened in their past. I'm not talking about something that's ongoing.
Well, and the Ezekiel Elliott thing is right, is exactly what it comes into this situation.
Was he convicted of anything?
But that all happened in college. Why should
Right.
the NFL be able to suspend him for something?
And
What
that's what I was
what
saying
I'm
about my
saying
yin and
was-
yang on this, because I have a hard time because he wasn't convicted, but yet
Right.
he's been tried and convicted in the court of the NFL. So I don't know where the line is anymore. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure I want to say I know where the line is. I think every situation is different, and I think you have to experience it
Well,
differently.
let's look at it this way. How many politicians run on a platform of lesser punishment? None. Really?
Oh, well, none in the major
Well,
parties.
you said we're not going to talk about politics.
No,
so
wait,
since you-
no, wait. So what I'm saying is it's the same way in all these different sports. Nobody's going to stand up and say, well, these punishments are much too harsh. We shouldn't. We should back off on this.
I would like to direct you to the Cowboys webpage and Twitter feed where everyone in the world thinks Roger Goodell should be skewered because Zeke was never convicted of anything and
But
should have
that's
never
their
done a
own
suspension.
team. The only
You
ones
said
that get,
who?
The only ones that get upset are ones that are not Cowboy fans in that situation. So we got to take another break. Try to steer Marty back on the road here, and we'll be back. It's the Front Row Roundtable show here on NBC 24.
Bring yourself to Ralphie's. Yeah, it's that good. It's that good no matter what your taste. It's that good. Come early, stay late. Burgers and beer, a shot of cheer. Great food and fun. It's that good here. Bring yourself to Ralphie's. Yeah, it's that good.
Hey, Mortgage Marty here. With the new tax code changes, home equity lines of credit, HELOCs as we call them, have changed whether they're deductible. And with recent interest rate increases, you're seeing those variable rates on them increase. I had a lot of interest in customers putting them in with their first mortgage, converting to a 10, 15, even 20 year to compress the timeline so they're not stretching back out over 30 and get better rates. If you have interest in that, just text HELOC to the number you see on the screen there, HELOC, and we'll get you info on how to take advantage of that tax deductibility all over again.
Save more at the Monroe Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Superstore when you drive home one of 4 amazing new models for only $178 a month. Drive home in a 2018 Dodge Charger GT all-wheel drive, 2018 Jeep Compass Limited, the all-new 2019 Jeep Cherokee Limited, or the all-new 2018 Jeep Wrangler Limited Sport 4-wheel drive 4-door. Call the Low Payment Kings toll-free at 1-888-4DODGE-1 or check out hundreds of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs at MonroeSuperstore.com.
Powerbomb Wrestling is on the road with 2 upcoming live events. BBW returns to Findlay on Sunday, June the 3rd at the All-American Rock House. It's a double main event featuring the Bachelor Ben Boone and Pedo the Killer Clown for the heavyweight title and Nate Matson and Sean Casey for the cruiserweight title. Powerbomb Wrestling back in Toledo on Sunday, June the 10th at St. Clement's Hall. See Dr. Jerry Graham and his new acquisition with Pedo the Killer Clown against Ben Boone and Malice. Get your discounted advance tickets anytime at pbwexcitement.com. Welcome back, Front Row Roundtable show presented by Ralphie's, and apparently we're not done with this topic, so we will. I promised I was going to confuse Marty when we came back, so.
I'm currently, I'd like to be called Walt Kowalski from Gran Torino for the rest of the show.
Here, you brought up Ezekiel Elliott, and this is where I'm going with the punishment that leagues dish out. You know, and you were talking about Kaepernick, and it's a little bit of a different thing. If he was a better quarterback, he'd be playing. I think we'd all agree on that, right?
Yes.
If he was, if he was Dan Marino, Brett Favre, whatever, he'd be playing. Ezekiel Elliott obviously is good enough to play in the NFL. He's never been convicted of anything. What gives the NFL the right to keep him from being at his job and doing what he does when he hasn't been convicted of anything? That's where I'm getting into this whole thing.
Speaking of going off-road, I think that the NFL went one way and then they overcorrected way the other way, because they had a span there where they had the Greg Hardys and the guys like that who were the Ray Rice.
Wait, neither of this is where the problem comes in. So I can't unsee what Ray Rice did. And because I think Danae, right? Ray Rice is.
Yeah, but he did something that was convicted.
He was not convicted. She did not press charges.
Right. She was not convicted.
See, be very careful. See, to me, that's the slippery slope you were headed down, and that's why I'm not confused on this.
Okay.
And Greg
Hardy, we did see it.
Greg Hardy was not convicted.
We did see it.
Because he paid someone to be unconvicted. And oh, by the way, if you want to get into politics, apparently if you have enough money, you can pay anybody to get away with anything, according to the. Now,
let's not go there.
I understand, but I'm saying, so to me, the problem here is if you have enough money, you can pay someone to get away with almost anything.
That's been forever. I mean, that's
okay. And then there was outrage over that, and so now they've overcorrected, which I agree with you. But the idea that conviction in and of itself is the reason we should or shouldn't want to watch someone or cheer for someone, to me, is also ludicrous, because I can't unsee Ray Rice smacking her.
Well, see,
and I can't unbelieve what I believe
he didn't
happened.
Smacked her. He punched her and knocked her out.
Okay, and I can't unbelieve what I believe Greg Hardy did. Right? I can't get out of my head those things. So it's not okay. And I think the Ezekiel Elliott one's a little different because there are varying stories. I mean, that one's a little less cut and dry. There's no video. And I'm not saying it did or didn't happen because I don't know.
But that's, the NFL had the Ray Rice and Greg Hardy, and so they said, okay, anything that, violence against women, we're coming down hard. Well, then Ezekiel Elliott.
And we botched those as bad as they could be humanly
Right.
botched.
The problem is when you start making that line fuzzy, of who you go after and who you don't, then it starts to become a problem. Ben Roethlisberger had his deal where he didn't get convicted of anything either.
So here's the
if
thing.
you read those police reports, that's rather grisly. But everybody's pretty much forgotten about that by now, except Browns fans probably.
Not necessarily true, because I know his nickname. So I mean, I guess the hard thing for me is you said when it gets fuzzy, and I think in many crimes it's very fuzzy most of the time, and that those of us that weren't there are passing judgment, and we weren't part of the jury, we weren't part of the actual. I mean, I think it's, as fans, how much attention do we really pay to the details as opposed to the sensationalism? And we weren't in the room, and I have a really hard time deciding on that.
Well, in the article, the one thing, and I'm all for victims' rights, but there's a woman who is an Oregon State season ticket holder. When she heard the news, she says she went in and went into her bedroom and cried for hours, but she kept her season tickets. She said she'll cheer for the offense, but when he's on the mound, she'll just sit there stone-faced. I mean,
okay.
But then she doesn't want him on the mound, so, that's like saying.
But that's her right. And I guess that's the side. So if enough people agree with her and you're the Cowboys and you decide you don't want Ezekiel Elliott to carry the ball or catch passes anymore, and you decide you don't want to be part of that, I'm not sure that's wrong.
But see, here
and I'm not sure as an employer that's unfair, because you make money, and by the way, it's a for-profit business. We're not talking about whether he gets to drive a car or gets to do other things. We're talking about whether that business is going to be hurt or helped by his presence. And I think in Colin Kaepernick's case, they decided hurt was the result, and no one's hiring him anymore. And we don't have to like that or agree with
We don't have much time, so
Sorry.
it's becoming a sermon.
I didn't mean...
Because we're down about a minute or so here. But if you make that too loose, where nobody has any rights to anything, anybody that gets out of prison, how do they find a job? How do they stay rehabilitated? Bernard Hopkins, for one, had a terrible record of getting into crime, and he served his time, straightened himself out, and the rest is history. I mean, that does happen quite often.
There's a podcast that I listen to religiously.
Maurice Claret's another one.
You know,
where he's led an exemplary life since he's gotten out.
Well, there's a podcast I listen to called Wrongful Conviction, and it's from the guy from the Innocence Project. He interviews all these people who were in jail for 20 plus years for crimes they didn't commit. Even they have problems getting jobs and stuff when they get out, just because they've been gone for so long. Think of how far things have gone, and if you didn't do it.
Right, exactly, and we've solved absolutely nothing here. So, but that's okay.
But, we spent a half hour doing it.
Half hour doing it. All right, we got to get out of here. Saturday Night Live is next at Powerbomb Wrestling at 2 a.m. If you can't catch it, DVR it. If you can't, watch it on Fight.tv. We'll see you next time here on the Roundtable Show, presented by Ralphie.